Good morning and welcome back. Squawk Box live from the NASDAQ market site in Times Square. Checking the futures this morning. They're in the green a little bit, but record-setting day yesterday.
Okay, Joe, new this morning, what could turn out to be the talker of the day, Microsoft co-founder Bill Gates publishing a memo that suggests adopting a different view and changing strategy towards addressing climate change. It is a rebuttal to what he calls, quote, the doomsday scenario, which Gates says is, quote, causing much of the climate community to focus too much on near-term emission goals, and it's diverting resources, he says, from the most effective things we should be doing to improve life in a warming world. He writes, quote, this is a chance to refocus on the metric that should count even more than emissions and temperature change, improving lives. Our chief goal should be to prevent suffering, particularly for those in the toughest conditions who live in the world's poorest countries. Although climate change will hurt poor people more than anyone else, for the vast majority of them, it will not be the only or even the biggest threat to their lives and welfare. The biggest problems are poverty and disease, just as they always have been. Now, I spoke to Bill Gates in an exclusive TV interview, and I asked him to explain what he hopes people take away from this new message.
Climate is a super important problem. There's enough innovation here to avoid super bad outcomes. We won't achieve our best goal, the 1.5 or even the 2 degrees. And as we go about trying to minimize that, we have to frame it in terms of overall human welfare, not just everything should be solely for climate.
How much of your own view is a function of just contextually what's happening in the world versus what I think you've thought for a long time about the climate?
Well, if the aid budgets to poor countries were continuing to go up the way they did over the last 25 years, then the trade-offs between climate action and saving children's lives wouldn't be as acute as it is now that these budgets are going down, and going down quite a bit. And so the plea here is to say, okay, let's take that very limited money and not have some partitioned off for particular causes. Let's measure it all in terms of the human welfare. How do you help those countries?
You were a huge supporter of the Paris Climate Accord at the time. And I wonder now, when you look back, given that you're changing sort of the metric with which you use, do you say to yourself that the Paris Climate Accord and its goals were misplaced?
No, not at all. That was a key milestone because the countries of the world said, hey, this is a mutual problem. The temperature rise, the entire world will experience a temperature rise from the emissions from all these countries. So getting countries to commit was very, very important. The one thing about that accord that turned out not to be realistic was the ambitious goal of staying to 1.5 degrees. We won't be able to do that. Even if you took all the money away from health, you wouldn't be able to do that. So now, the question is, okay, what temperature level are we going to end up at? Very important to minimize that, but not at the expense of everything else.
Okay, but in the context of not at the expense of everything else, so many businesses, companies, including Microsoft, made pledges around being net zero, trying to get, in some cases, negative net zero, meaning going back and paying for their carbon production from earlier. Was that a mistake? Now
not at all.
So that's not the message that you're trying to suggest?
No, not at all.
Okay.
I mean, why have we been able to lower the future emissions? It's because companies like Microsoft and many others focused on this initiative. And it's very important that those companies help advance these new technologies by being the early customers for things like nuclear fission, fusion, clean cement. They're driving the prices down. And that's the magic thing. When you get the clean stuff to be cheaper than the dirty stuff, then you can take that whole area of emissions and saying, okay, just normal market economics works there.
When the climate activists who have been very supportive of what you've done, and you've been very supportive of what they've done, read this, and if Greta Thunberg is reading this and saying to herself, my goodness, he seems like he is reversing himself, what would you tell her?
I'd say, wasn't the goal here to improve human lives? And shouldn't we, in our awareness of how little generosity there is to help, measure, should we get them a measles vaccine, or should we do some climate related activity? And if we stop funding all vaccines and that, saved you 0.1 degree, would that be a smart trade-off? That's the kind of question we have to ask. So I'm a climate activist, but I'm also a child survival activist.
Oh, so what do you think is going to be the critique of this? There are going to be people who are going to say that you are changing the goalposts because of this political climate as a way to placate President Trump, who has not been on the side of some of the net zero and obviously the Paris Climate Accord and things like that.
Well, I'm glad that some of the provisions that promoted new climate technologies got preserved. I was disappointed that a lot of that was taken away, but the provisions supporting nuclear and geothermal, some of those were maintained. The U.S. has pulled back, and that's a huge disappointment. We really need all the countries working together on this, just like we need them to be generous on their aid budget. If you think climate is the only problem and it's apocalyptic, or if you think climate's not a problem at all, my memo will make no sense to you. You'll be like, oh no, it should all be climate, or you'll be like, why are you even still talking about this climate thing? Why do you invest billions of your money into these companies? The middle position, that climate is super important, but has to be considered in terms of overall human welfare. I didn't pick that position because it's everybody agrees with it. It's, I think, intellectually the right answer.
And guys, it's a very nuanced view. I'm so curious, Becky and Joe, what you think of it. When you read it on the page, it really is, or at least seems to be somewhat a reversal, if you will, to some of the comments that he's made in the past, though I actually went back and looked. Some of the comments he'd made in the past, even about the Paris Climate Accord, he had said that he thought the goals actually were too ambitious, even at the time, that they would never be achieved. But I do know that I'm sure critics of climate issues and of his will say that this is a complete retreat, which I also think it is not. So there's sort of two ideas that maybe you can hold in your head at the same time, but I also imagine Greta Thunberg will not be happy with these comments either, because it is a trade-off, and that's what he's presenting here.
I think that sums it up, Andrew, that trying to appease or I don't know, not upset Greta Thunberg is kind of that kind of sums it up for me right there.
The one thing I will say is Bill Gates has always been somebody who has measured outcomes. If you read his annual letter from year to year, he talks about how no matter what people think, the world is getting better, and he does that by measuring childhood deaths worldwide. He does that by measuring all kinds of things. I wonder if he's seen a shift in the numbers, and if that has convinced him that more money needs to go to these other issues. One thing he said is climate change is not going to be the biggest issue.
It's always been clear. Look, it's always been clear that developed countries have a much better ability to try to do all these pie-in-the-sky initiatives and spend money where the starving country, the less developed countries that really need fossil fuel. It's been to a lot of people like me. It's been kind of a, I look at it and I listen to what he said. Andrew, I'm on the other side of what he said. There's people that he said are here. I'm here. I think the entire initiative is a fool's errand and a phantom menace. And I've said for so long, plastics in the ocean, particulate pollution, strip mining, overfishing. I can give you 50 things we could have been spending that money on instead of this fool's errand of trying to make sure we don't go to 0.041% CO2 versus 0.040% CO2. All of the faux connection between every adverse weather event and a single carbon dioxide molecule in 10,000 parts of the atmosphere, people laugh at it. And it's weird that it's so politically motivated. Greta Thunberg is a perfect example. To the far left, it's a secular religion that's not based on any hardcore science. And I think that's where I come from. Andrew.
And Joe, I think one of the things he's trying to say is that view he's suggesting, and I think it's actually the first time he suggested publicly, is too much. That is an extreme view, and that the industry
might not want
and
to
the
throw me
world
into,
has almost over-rotated towards that view. And what he's saying, and I think he's saying it in the context, and this goes to where Becky was going with the money and USAID and everything else.
That's what I wondered. The cuts to USAID, did this change his mind?
That is exactly what he said. And I think that in the context of limited resources.
To me, Bill Gates is absolutely insufferable when he's talking about some of this. I'm sorry, but he just is. I know he coded some great software, but even when he weighs in on vaccines, he means well. He means well. But on this issue, he reminds me of someone who bought Bitcoin over $100,000.
I thought that you were going to say hallelujah and say, here's somebody.
Baby steps.
Maybe you think it's baby steps.
He's slowly, we've had Chris Wright on, we've had other people from the administration. I could bring people on that I guess they're called heretics because it's a secular religion. To the left, it really is. It is a secular. It has heretics. It has denial.
A political position. I think he's saying, look,
it's all political.
Climate change is real. He's not denying that climate change is real. He's saying climate change is real on one end, and yet we have to
finally
work
saying
on these
it might
other
not
issues
be
as well. And how do we do
a
that?
Crisis.
And we can't take all of our money and all of our energy
and
focus it solely on climate change when we have all these other issues
Andrew,
at hand.
Bjorn Lomborg, there's been people. I mean, I follow the entire area. There's been people that have been saying this for a long time, that there's no way. Look at China. They're building, 40 coal plants a day? There's no way that you're going to stop emissions. Whether it becomes something we can't deal with 50 years from now. Did you see earlier this month the whole idea of rising sea levels? That was all game. That was a lot of the projections. Anything that went against that dogma or that narrative, you couldn't get it published. You couldn't get it published.
I don't think he's taking your position,E, that climate change is not happening at all. I think he's saying
I'm not saying it's not happening at all. I'm not saying it's a crisis. He's now gotten to the point where he doesn't think it's necessarily an apocalyptic crisis.
And by the way, he said very specifically in the letter that there are issues that are going to affect the poorest people in the world much more drastically, that this is not going to be
have some water from my plastic bottle. I'm going to throw it in the ocean.
That you stole from Fiji, and why is Fiji now sinking into the ocean?
Only not from this.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to continue this conversation, guys, in the next hour.
Don't make me continue it. I don't even want to look at my Twitter.
A different part of the conversation.
I don't even want to look at my Twitter account.
You don't want to hear.
No.
After
he's got a lot of other things he's talking about.
We've got a lot of other things. Bill Gates weighs in on the AI bubble impact, potential job impact. We talk about companies and what's happening in Washington and so much more. A lot of provocative thoughts. Joe and Becky, I'm sure you'll have lots of thoughts as well. And we'll show you some of that in just a little bit.
Get your popcorn ready. All right, interesting conversation, much more to come. In fact, when we come back, Kathy Wood speaking to CNBC overnight about whether AI is a bubble. Kind of plays into what we're going to hear from Bill Gates a little later this morning, too. That conversation with Kathy Wood is next. Right now, as we head to a break, check out shares of PayPal. That stock up 13% on news that the company is partnering with OpenAI. We've got more on that story coming at the top of the hour. Squawk Box, we'll be right back.
As we have said, President Trump is in Tokyo, and Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick just announcing $490 billion in investment deals. And President Trump is speaking right now. We're going to listen in.
You made a lot of money. You're making a lot of money, but I congratulate you. It really is. It's an amazing room of people, tremendously successful, great businessmen, beyond business, really. Most of you are really beyond business, so it's an honor to be with you. We had a long day, a long couple of days. We're in Malaysia. We're celebrating a great end to a war that could have happened. It was a big deal. I won't bore you with the facts, but we ended 8 wars in 8 months, and I think there's another one coming. I thought the one coming was a lot easier than the Middle East. We did great with the Middle East, but with Russia, I thought that was going to be an easy one, Ukraine, Russia, because of the relationship with President Putin. But that didn't work out too well so far, but it will. We'll get it done too, but it'll be that'll be number 9. I think that's just about it. Anyone starts, I think generally speaking, I'll end it. Otherwise, a lot of people die, and we don't like that. But I want to thank our outstanding ambassador, George Glass, who you just heard from. Thank you, George. And his wife, Mary. Mary, thank you very much. Great job. This is such a great group of people that you put together. I'll be meeting with President Xi the day after tomorrow. I'm going to a wonderful place where I think a lot of you may be going. We're going to be meeting tomorrow at a very fantastic meeting. Who's going tomorrow? Is anybody going that I know in this room? I think a lot. Tim, are you going? Maybe? You're not. You mean you came here for this? And you're just going back just like that? Huh? Well, we'll be going to South Korea, and then on the following day, a meeting with President Xi, as you probably heard. I'd be surprised if anybody didn't hear. That's a big meeting, and I think it's going to work out very well, actually. I think it's going to be great for everybody. But I also want to recognize people that have been doing a fantastic job. Our cabinet, we have a lot of members here tonight. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Where are you, Marco? Stand up, Marco. Thank you. Great job. He's doing a great job. They're all doing a great job. Secretary of War, you know, what used to be Secretary of Defense, Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth. Thank you, Pete. You know, we used to be Secretary of War. It used to be the Department of War. And then we became politically correct. We won World War I, we won World War II, we won everything in between and everything in front of it. And then we'd win wars, but we'd leave after we won. We'd go into wars that we shouldn't have been in, but then we'd just leave. We'd bomb the hell out of somebody and would leave. And I said, you know what do you think of that idea? Pete said, I like it. I said, boy, that didn't take long. Right, Pete? But he's doing a great job. He's doing a great job on the border, too. You see what's happening. And we had drugs coming in, a lot of them coming in by sea. There aren't too many coming in by sea anymore. They've decided to take a pass. I don't know if you've seen what's happening, but it's really been amazing what's been happening in terms of our border. We have a border that's totally closed. We used to have a border that was totally open. We took in 25 million people. Many of them should never have been there. And they came from prisons, jails. They came from mental institutions, insane asylums. Some people say, how come you mention both? I say, well, the insane asylum is a mental institution on steroids, and it's beyond the mental institution. But we took them both. And we took drug dealers, we took everybody. What a disgrace. What a disgraceful job they did, the previous administration. And I wouldn't normally say that, but what they did to our country was incredible. And now, you know, we had a country, it was a dead country. Everybody, so many of the leaders that I've met, King of Saudi Arabia told me they all said essentially, we thought your country was dead 1 year ago. We thought your country was dead. Now it's the hottest country anywhere in the world, like by far. I mean, we have some leaders here, so I don't want to insult anybody. We have the hottest country in the world. So I just want to thank some of these people. Scott Bessent, you're doing a great job, Secretary of Treasury. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Scott. Great. How good is he on television? You know, he soothes the markets. I don't soothe the market. I sometimes disturb the markets. He soothes the markets. He goes, I say, Scott, go in and clean it all up for me, Scott. And he goes in, bop, 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 bop. And he's really terrific. He's done a great job. And I'm thinking about him for the Fed. See, now the camera's going, breaking news, but he won't take the job. He likes being Treasury. So we're not thinking about him really, oh yeah. But we're very proud of the job you're doing. Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick. Thank you, Howard. We just, I guess it's about 518 billion in the other room. We were a little bit short of 500, and then we had a couple of people that just announced, including Toyota, 10 billion, going to open new car plants throughout the United States, a lot of them. And it's great because of the tariffs and because of the November 5th election, I think both. But the tariffs have been tremendously helpful in terms of national security, the national security for our country. And a lot of the wars that I stopped were because of tariffs. And frankly, I did a great service to the world, but because of tariffs, because of trade. If you look at India and Pakistan, they were going at it. 7 planes were shot down. 7 brand new, beautiful planes were shot down, and they were going at it, 2 big nuclear powers. And I said to Prime Minister Modi, and I said to the Prime Minister, a very nice man, a very good man, and the Field Marshal over in Pakistan, I said, look, we're not going to do any trade if you're going to be fighting. No, 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 one thing has nothing to do with the other. I said, it has a lot to do with the other. 2 nuclear powers. We get that nuclear dust all over the place. All of you are affected, right? Then we said, no, we're not doing any deals if you're going to fight. And within about 24 hours, that was the end of that. It was amazing, actually. And we've done numerous like that. I would say trade is responsible for 70% of the fact that we didn't have wars by using our heads, because they want to trade with the United States. But I said, we're not going to trade if you're going to go to war. And it's amazing how quickly they were able to make deals. And, you know, they would have been fighting for 10 years, killing millions of people, numerous of them. So we're very happy about that. But I also want to say that U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer is like, he's really fit. Where is he? He leaves everybody happy. Because everybody, you know, they have such confidence in him. Even the other side. I mean, you have to have both sides have confidence, especially when it comes to trade between countries. But Jamieson, you're doing a great job. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. And we had a phenomenal day here in Japan with a momentous trade deal. We made a big, big, beautiful trade deal for both countries. In fact, to the best of my knowledge, I think Japan also had their best stock market day ever. So your new prime minister is doing very well. First female, first woman prime minister. And I said, you already hit the highest stock price you've ever hit. So she's very happy. And we spent the whole day together. It was beautiful. And she's great. We went out to the USS George Washington, the SS George Washington. It was really great. The sailors and a lot of others, we had a lot of people, a lot of military people were there, but boy, that was some scene. It was incredible. You wouldn't believe that a ship could hold that many people. But I just want to say that she is a delight, and I think she's going to be a great prime minister. I really do. I got to know her pretty well in a short period of time. She was a very good friend and ally of Shinzo Abe, who is a friend of mine, one of my best friends in terms of this world, the world of nations. And he was a great man, and he got, unfortunately, what happened to him was sad, very sad. But he was a great leader, and we miss him very much. But a fantastic tribute to the U.S.-Japanese alliance aboard that ship today, USS, think of it, USS George Washington. It's the only ship that just doesn't come back to the United States. It stays here. It's very proud. This is our largest military contingent. Pete, I think like 66,000 soldiers, Navy and others. So this was a fantastic day. The level of excitement and enthusiasm, it's so easy. People say, how do you speak in front of that many people and enjoy it? When you have so much love, there's such love. There was such love on that ship. It's really easy to do. They don't understand that. It's easy to do. But tonight I'm more confident than ever that the friendship between the United States and Japan is strong as it can be. And it's thriving, it's prosperous, and it'll soon be, I think, greater than ever before. And we had 4 great years. You know, we had the greatest economy in the history of our country. But we're blowing it away this time, to be honest with you. We're blowing it. We had 4 great years. As you know, we had the 1-year deduction. I call it the 1-year little deduction, like you can deduct every single thing. And nobody ever thought that was possible. That beats 38 years, right? But now we did it for a period of 10 years instead of a period of 1 year. It's much stronger. It's and you can deduct structures, and for the people, you have no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security. Think of it, no tax on overtime for your workers, and it really covers everything. The great, big, beautiful bill. We got everything done. I said, let's get it all done. A lot of people want to do it little, small pieces, like 9 of them, 12 of them. I said, put it all into one bill, and if we get it done, we're done for 4 years. We don't need anything more from Congress in terms of that, right, Scott? We got it all done. It was a little risky, but because if we didn't get it done, I don't know, who knows what would have happened with these radical left lunatics that we have to deal with. But we got it all done, and now we're set, and you're set. The investment in this country is set. You have all that you want. The people in this room are the living embodiment of the U.S.-Japanese economic partnership that together we're taking to even greater heights. It will, I think, never be like it is now, but it'll get even better if that's possible. I especially want to thank Japanese company SoftBank. I think Masa is here. Where's Masa? I played golf with this guy last week. Thank every putt, every putt. We played with Bryson DeChambeau. We had a great match. And the great Gary played 9, and he shot 70. Is that right? That's right. We won the tournament. We had 36 teams, and we won the tournament. And we didn't cheat. You know, a lot of those cheated because I know how they play, and they did not shoot those scores. But we got, well, it helped to have Bryson hitting a ball 400 yards. You know, it's always nice to have. I said, I'll take Bryson on our team. But we had a great time, and you played great, and you putted very well, and I appreciate it because I now have an extra trophy on my desk, and I like that. Yes, please.
Four Eagles.
That's right. 4 Eagles. We made 4 Eagles, and no, I seriously mean every time he stood over a putt. I'm not saying it's going to happen every time, but it happened this time, and he's bing, and we didn't have to putt because we're playing best ball, so we didn't have to putt. So thank you very much, Masa. That's better than all the deals you made. That made him feel better than all the deals he's made. Thank you. It's great to be here. We'll do it again. But I also want to thank Toyota for that great, it's not a contribution, it's an investment. We're having investments in our country greater than ever before, greater than any country has ever had, actually. We'll talk about that. And I also want to thank the people from Carrier here someplace. Where's Carrier that were here? Just thank you very much. They made a big contribution also to the White House fund. We're redoing lots of things in the White House. We're bringing it up to the way it should be. And you probably heard, I don't know if anybody heard about, we're building a little ballroom over there. People are loving it. Now they're loving it.
We're going to monitor this with President speaking in Japan. But in the meantime, join us now with the latest on President Trump's Asia trip. Anya Manuel, Aspen Strategy Group, Executive Director. Good morning. It's good to have you this morning to respond to a lot of this. Can we?
Happy to be here.
This is, you point out that the new Japanese Prime Minister, transformational leader in Japan and pro-U.S. It's weird the way that's happening. I guess it happened in Argentina as well. How will this affect relations between our country and Japan?
I think this is a really positive sign. She's a strong leader. She's deeply conservative. But one of the things that means is that she wants very strong defense ties and economic ties with the United States. And you're already seeing that in how she has accelerated how fast Japan will get to 2% of GDP spending on defense. And I think this is going to be a positive relationship. That's very important because, as you know, Joe, the Indo-Pacific is becoming more and more dangerous. And of course, we're all watching what happens between President Trump's meeting with President Xi later this week.
It's probably not a coincidence the way this is going now. Japan and eventually a meeting, I guess, with President Xi. Was it planned that way, do you think? Because he can show up, for that meeting with a lot of these other deals already done. Are we strengthened and emboldened by what's happening right now for our dealing with China?
We are strengthened, and I do think that's intentional. Traditionally, U.S. presidents will meet with our friends and allies in Asia and elsewhere before we meet with big countries where we have a more complicated relationship, and that is China. So I do think it was right for the president to sweep through ASEAN, do a lot of critical minerals deals. It sounds like the deal that's shaping up between Japan and the U.S. is going well. And the big question is what happens with China? And there, what the reporting we've seen so far is mostly a rollback of the problems that China and the U.S. have created for themselves and each other over the last 10 months, with maybe some additional work on fentanyl, which would be very welcome. So we'll wait to see what happens.
I was going to ask you about that, Anya, because let's drill down on that. You at least concede that it takes two to tango, that these China and the U.S. have created some of these problems. Neither one is maybe blameless. The New York Times, that's what I was going to reference. Trump seeks to end the crisis he initiated. I know what they're saying, but it was in response to something that I was going to ask you. Over the years, have we not been treated badly in certain areas of trade by China that maybe caused President Trump to think those things had to be, I don't know, reset or dealt with?
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right that the U.S. and China have a very complicated relationship, especially on the economic side, and there are big imbalances. The Chinese have massive overcapacity that they export, sometimes dump on the markets. And there are security issues, of course, but this trade deal, while I think it's an important beginning, doesn't quite fix those big structural problems that that frankly we've been dealing with across different administrations and still are.
If we could get, well, let me ask you, do you think fentanyl and I don't know, is it in China's, are they deliberately trying to undercut the United States by exporting the precursors in fentanyl? That's what the Trump administration would say. Is that an important issue in terms of trade with China? And then if we get some soybeans, maybe we get back on the soybean train. Maybe that's worth it. Maybe those two things are worth it because we can't solve the security in Taiwan and all these other issues.
Those things are definitely worth it. They're not the only thing that's out there, and I wouldn't venture whether China is intentionally exporting fentanyl precursors to harm people here in the U.S. I live in San Francisco. The streets of San Francisco have been decimated by people who are fentanyl addicted. So it's very welcome that President Trump, as President Biden did, is focusing on this issue, and let's hope we get a deal on this. It's very, very important. And I would say one other thing. It's very important for President Xi and Trump to be talking and for our militaries to be talking. I just came back from China. Man, there's a two-speed economy there. The traditional economy, housing, some of the consumer things not going so well. On the tech side, Joe, they are going incredibly fast. They are really leaning into the future. And sometimes I worry that here in the U.S., we seem to be hearkening back to the past.
Right.
So
although no guardrails anywhere for AI. So we'll see. We had a robot out. I was nervous. Becky went out and Oculus. What's this robot's name? Oedipus?
No, it's the Optimus.
Optimus. I knew it was close. I knew Oedipus is a different guy entirely.
Prime Transformers.
But he just had a look on his face when he looked nice here, and the whole thing was.
He had no look on his face. Just a.
I know.
Mask.
I saw some. I don't know. I want him to grab you, and couldn't have pried his finger. I don't know.
Tell me if any concerns me sitting out there yesterday.
Ask Anya. Are we not worried about no guardrails on AI in either country? Aren't we worried?
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you raised it. We are extremely worried about guardrails on AI, and I think the Chinese are worried. So I would hope that coming out of this meeting between Xi and Trump, you have more detailed discussions between the two countries about that exact issue. There's some in the track 2 side. I'm part of one, but it's It's more nascent than it needs to be. I just have to put one plug in for the Aspen Strategy Group. We have an edited volume coming out tomorrow that discusses trade, AI, and many of these other issues that we're talking about here today.
Very good. All right, good plug on you, Manuel. Aspen Strategy Group Executive Director. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Jill, you mentioned none of these concerns when you said, hey, there's candy out there.
I didn't go out there. I said,
know,
yeah.
you sent me out
Send the
to go
girl
get
out to see Odysseus or whatever that. What's his name?
Optimus.
Optimus. Okay.
Optimus. Like the Transformer.
Meantime,
Out of the
folks,
Transformers.
it is now, we are way past 7 a.m. right now on the East Coast.
Oh my
You're
God.
watching Squawk Box on CNBC. We had a lot of news. President Trump speaking just earlier. I'm Andrew Ross Sorkin, along with Joe Kernan and Becky Quick. Let's tell you some of the top stories right now. The Federal Reserve kicking off its two-day policy meeting. The market's widely expecting a quarter-point cut. That decision will come tomorrow. Of course, then there'll be the press conference. Steve Leisman and co. will be there, and we'll talk a lot about that. Also, PayPal shares, they are up, and they are up sharply this morning. This is CNBC.com's Hugh Sun, first reporting that the company will be the first payments wallet inside of OpenAI. So starting next year, users of ChatGPT will be able to purchase items through PayPal directly inside the app. And it was an amazing end to an historic baseball game. The Dodgers' Freddie Freeman hitting a walk-off home run in the 18th inning to beat the Toronto Blue Jays in Game 3 of the World Series. The game lasting, you ready for this? 6 hours and 39 minutes. Joe.
There's 162 games, Andrew. That's why most of the time they'll stick a guy on second base in the 10th inning. But not now, and this is why. This is why they came up with that. It's not that hard, put a guy on second, move him over to third, with a bunt, and he scores. That's a way to end these games. But if you don't do that,
What did you say, 37 guys who got stuck?
I didn't even, last night?
Yeah, I think it was like 37 guys who got stuck.
Did they put a guy on second last night? They didn't. Are they doing that, or are they not? Maybe they are. I wasn't up watching it.
I wasn't either. I just heard about it on
Someone
the
can
this morning.
tell me on Twitter. Did they really 18 innings with the guy on?
Well, I don't know if it
Did they
was
put
with
a guy
the
on
guys or
second?
not. They went through 19 pitchers. They had
I
37
thought I saw it the
guys
other
that got
night.
stuck on base.
No, they don't. Not in the World Series. Yeah, I was watching another game where they did. Yeah, they're not. So yeah.
New this morning right here on Squawk Box, Microsoft's co-founder Bill Gates publishing a new essay on climate. It's aimed at to deliver a message ahead of COP30, and he's suggesting that the climate community should shift its strategy from temperature and emission targets to the impact on human lives. An exclusive interview on that topic. I also asked him if he is worried about whether we are in an AI bubble. Here's what he had to say.
We need to define bubble. If what we mean is like tulips in the Netherlands, that they eventually looked back and said, what the heck, there was nothing there. Those were just tulips. No, that's not where we are. If you mean it's like the internet bubble, where in the end something very profound happened, the world was very different, some companies succeeded, but a lot of the companies were kind of Me Too, fell behind, burning capital companies. Absolutely. There are a ton of these investments that will be dead ends.
And you look at all of the investments that are being made today by some of the big tech companies, some companies who are not making money on AI yet, but are making massive commitments to chip makers and data centers, and say this math makes sense?
The AI is the biggest technical thing ever in my lifetime. I mean, it is so profound, and therefore its influence is hard to overstate. And the economic value, this is basically intelligence, where you can get medical advice, or you can get a tutor, or you can get somebody to help you design drugs. So the value is extremely high. Just like creating the internet ended up being, in net, very, very valuable. But you have a frenzy, and some of these companies will be glad they spent all this money. Some of them, they'll commit to data centers whose electricity is too expensive,
Right.
that it could be done overseas, or they'll buy a generation of chips and they won't have captured all their value before the next one comes along. But if you want to be a tech company, you don't get to say, no, you know, let's check out of this race.
What do you think the public appetite for this is ultimately going to be? And I ask because I think there's concerns about two things that are happening right now. One is energy costs. So there's a whole bunch of places where people want to put data centers, and you know, the community says, no, we don't want this because we don't want to have to spend more money for power to power our own homes. At the same time, they're worried that if they actually are successful, they'll also lose their jobs.
We need to put things like TerraPower nuclear reactors in places where it's very clear that you're not raising the residents' electricity bills because that's being put in there. Historically, nuclear was done in a way that the utility bore a lot of that liability. That business model won't get repeated. So we need to make sure to pick locations where the economics and the political acceptance is very, very strong. We don't have permission to drive up people's electricity costs. You know, in terms of the jobs, this is going to take some period of time. But yes, although it hasn't been seen in large numbers, over the next several years, there will be some impact on the job market. Nowadays, when you say that, some people are like, oh, how can you say that? Isn't that going to slow the U.S. down in this race? But it's only honest for people to speak frankly about the fact this will have a big effect on the job market.
And of course, Gates is a longtime capitalist, so I talked to him about the industrial policy coming from the White House, including the U.S. taking stakes in rare earth and chip companies. Here's what he had to say.
The government operates best when it's kind of predictable. That is, when you know what are the tariffs going to be for the next 20 years. Because when you build a factory, so the government shouldn't be changing its policy, every year or every day, because, predictability is a very, very important thing. Understanding when the company's helping nascent technology, is it doing that for the good of the country and, and treating companies equally? Or will it want to own part of those companies and if somebody has better technology, they'll favor the company they own part of. We need to understand what those policies are. Yes, I think there's a rush of people to say, wow, maybe that's how to, get to the front of the line for government money. But the rules of the game we're playing are pretty unclear right now.
Bill Gates, speaking out on so many issues, I imagine going to be creating a debate around what he said about the climate this morning, at least among some climate activists, as he sort of shifts his focus and sort of the metrics that he's thinking about that issue, and then his comments about AI and a potential AI bubble and industrial policy as well, Becky.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've heard some of these things from Bill, and weighing in just on the industrial policy where he thinks all of this stuff is pretty interesting. What was your biggest takeaway, Andrew?
I thought that I think the issue on climate is actually going to be the big issue, because for so long, so many companies and Bill Gates and others have talked about climate in a particular way, and there's been such on temperature and carbon emissions as sort of almost focus. And his conversation today about thinking about those trade-offs, I think is going to ignite a new conversation about climate. I imagine the conversation will not be as nuanced as he's hoping it will be, but I imagine that he's trying to generate a conversation in that regard. And then I think actually some of his comments about just an AI bubble, at least in my mind, are spot on, which is to say AI is so exciting and is the future, but there is likely to be a hiccup at some point along the way.
Right.
Literally, since the movie, we have heard doom and gloom forecasts of an existential threat in our lifetime from this.
Well, that's why what's so interesting is it's not a doomsday scenario anymore.
I know, but since that, no ice in the Arctic by 2005. Meanwhile, Al Gore, how wealthy has he become from all of his investments in what I think will eventually turn out to be, as I've said so many times, a fool's errand. And maybe in that respect, it is notable that it's to even acknowledge it's not the existential crisis of our time, which we heard from Joe Biden every time he was in front of a microphone about how
And that's why I think it's going to create a debate among
Maybe it will.
politicians, among activists.
If anyone ever cared what Bill Gates, from my point of view, if anyone who ever cared about what he was saying in the first place. I like
Well,
that
I think
he's worried
actually a lot
about
of people did and followed this path. I mean, this has been a conversation. Look at all of the companies that followed net zero policies for the last several years. We've invested enormous amounts of money in this space. The question is, are they going to let up on that? I mean, he's actually saying he's hoping they don't let up on that. So it's going to be very interesting to see how people react.
If you don't have federal government incentives pushing that, you're much less likely to get it. Just look at the the electric vehicle pickup. Without the incentives, the $7,500 a piece that you get as a discount on those things, without federal dollars behind it, my guess is the companies won't. If there's not tax incentives, the money probably won't flow in the same way.
I'm just saying, a lot of people came to this realization a long time ago, Andrew, and I know he created Microsoft and Word or whatever. I know he knows a lot about software. A lot of people never took any. I'm glad he cares about the welfare of children now, though, given some of the other.
He's been caring about the welfare of children the whole time, Joe.
I know. I'm making a double on. I'm not going to go there. I won't go there. But good that he's suddenly has climate, worried about kids and being impacted by. There are people that aren't having babies, Andrew, because they don't want to bring kids into a world where they think there's going to be fire and brimstone falling from the sky, from what climate zealots have been preaching.
Look, I think he's been, focused on, measles and polio and AIDS and trying to save, tens of thousands.
You're not catching my drift. You're not catching my drift. I'm not going to go there.
But I'm saying almost singularly, there's very few people on this planet that have an authentic claim on being able to say that they've saved that many lives. So think about that trade-off.
Well, okay, you want to talk about vaccines, Andrew? And that's another controversial subject that I'm not sure I care what he thinks about those either. But
eradicated polio.
Right.
All right, when we come back.
Go back to Squawk Box this morning, making some headlines. Bill Gates calling on leaders to shift their approach to climate change. In a letter that was released today, he argues that the, quote, doomsday scenario is, in his words, quote, causing much of the climate community to focus too much on near-term emission goals, and it's diverting resources from the most effective things people should be doing to improve life in a warming world.
Climate is a super important problem. There's enough innovation here to avoid super bad outcomes. We won't achieve our best goal, the 1.5 or even the 2 degrees. And as we go about trying to minimize that, we have to frame it in terms of overall human welfare, not just everything should be solely for climate.
And an exclusive interview as we were discussing issues around energy and the cost of energy and its impact on climate. We talked to the Microsoft co-founder about the talk of an AI bubble. Here's what he had to say.
Absolutely. There are a ton of these investments that will be dead ends. So the value is extremely high, just like creating the internet ended up being, in that, very, very valuable. But you have a frenzy, and some of these companies will be glad they spent all this money. Some of them, they'll commit to data centers whose electricity is too expensive, that it could be done overseas, or they'll buy a generation of chips and they won't have captured all their value before the next one comes along. But, if you want to be a tech company, you don't get to say, no, let's check out of this race.
Bill Gates with some pretty provocative comments this morning, already stirring a bit of a conversation online in Washington and elsewhere. And I imagine we're going to be talking about this for quite some time, Joe.
Yep. Just start. Baby steps. Thanks, Andrew. The latest CNBC Fed survey is out. Steve Leisman joins us now. I can't believe it. The ADP and the Fed survey.
All in one day.
Man. You still my beating heart. What does it say?
It says, Joe, that a rate cut is on the way from the Fed this meeting, the next meeting in December as well, and possibly in January, despite a government shutdown in which, according to one of our respondents to the survey, says the Fed is flying blind. 92% say the Fed will cut.
That would be different how?
But only, are you going to comment the whole way through? Because it's okay. If they give me the time and back, I don't mind the play-by-play.
Zervos is here, and he's laughing.
It was a hell of a run around the end. Anyway, 92% say the Fed will cut. 66% say the Fed should cut. 100 basis points total of cuts in 2025 and 2026. So we're not far from the end here. 320 is the average funds rate for our 38 respondents for the end of 2026. December 2025, just a couple months from now, the Fed will end QT. Richard Bernstein, CEO of Richard Bernstein Advisors, writes into the survey, politics rather than financial conditions are clearly influencing the Fed's rate decisions. Financial conditions are near historically easy. Financial assets are ripping, and inflation remains well above the Fed's target. In more normal times, there is no way the Fed would be cutting rates. Here, I think Zervos is going to have some comments on that, though I am commenting on my own commentary. In more normal times, the Fed would be seeing economic data, but it's not due to the shutdown. 45% of respondents think the shutdown ends in October. 34% say it takes until November. The respondents on average say it costs the economy about 0.3 percentage points per month when the government is closed. But most of them say the economy gets it back after it reopens, with 39% saying at least some of it, 55% saying all of it. 8 out of 10 say it will have no effect on the stock market. That looks pretty obvious. But there's some concern about the Fed making all these decisions without data. Only 5% are extremely confident they have an accurate picture of the economy with the data they're currently getting. 71% saying they're somewhat confident. 24% say not at all. Guy Labas of Janney Montgomery Scott writes in, is it Labas? Labas? No S?
He's French.
I love it. Anyway, he says the Fed is flying in a blizzard with a blindfold on and no backup instrumentation isn't a great place for monetary policy. It's even worse than there were mountains in the area. In equal percentages, respondents worry that the lack of data could cause the Fed to cut too little or cut too much.